everybody. Welcome to the October edition of the Darwin's Community Chat. My name is Annie Alley, and I'll be your moderator. Thanks so much for joining us. I'd like to introduce my co-host, Gary Tashjian.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. Gary's the founder and CEO of Darwin's, and I know many of you know this, but Gary founded Darwin's about 16 years ago after he had a firsthand experience of feeding natural raw food and finding the power of that to really improve the health of his senior dog. And now he has a growing herd of senior dogs, which he'll talk to us a little bit about on the call today. And I'm also really excited to introduce Dr. Jackie Sehn. She has a veterinary practice here in the Seattle area, and she's actually Gary's vet. So it's wonderful to have you with us too, Dr. Sehn.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. I'd also like to introduce Peter Nguyen. Peter is a member of the Darwin's family, and he has firsthand experience right now rehabilitating an overweight dog. In fact, you might have seen his dog Leroy on the Darwin's social media feeds. We've been tracking Leroy's weight loss using Darwin's, and Dr. Jackie is also Leroy's vet as well. So we're one big happy Darwin's family here today. Hi, Peter.
Hello.
Good to have you with us.
Yeah,
Awesome. So I just want to say for all our attendees that are listening today or watching us, we would love to have your questions. We will be fielding your questions that you can ask to Gary, Peter, and Dr. Jackie in the second half of the community chat here today. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be teeing those up to ask our panel. But to start us off, I'd love to turn this over to you, Gary, and tell us a little bit about why we selected pet obesity as this month's topic.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you everybody for your support of Darwin's, but secondly, for joining us today in what is the first of what we hope is many of these kind of community chats on topics that we think are going to be of interest to pet owners. Obesity is one that I won't say is near and dear to my heart, but is something that we're living with because we actually have just fostered a new dog that is obese. So this is an issue we're dealing with right now and have dealt with other rescue dogs. But it's also one that many pet owners face. I think the statistics show that over half of dogs out there are in fact overweight, and in a lot of those cases, our own research indicates that in many cases, pet owners are not aware that their dogs are overweight. So this is an issue that I think has a lot of interest among pet owners, and is something that we want to raise the profile of what pet owners can do about that. I'm very happy to have both Dr. Jackie and Peter with us today. In addition, for all of you Darwin's customers out there, in addition to being my vet, there's another connection that we have with Dr. Jackie, which is that 16 years ago when I was starting Darwin's and was trying to decide on what a good formula would be for a pet food that was inspired by nature and informed by science, I went to Dr. Jackie and asked her for her thoughts, and she basically kind of scribbled down the formula that is the basis for our food since then. We've tweaked that formula, but it's still it still has its origins in that little kind of back of the envelope thing that Jackie did for me many years ago. So thank you for that, Jackie, and all of us should be thanking her for that contribution.
You are very, very welcome, Gary.
So with that, let's start with you, if we could, Dr. Jackie, and tell us a little bit about your practice and your approach to both health and specifically nutrition.
Well, hi, everybody, and thank you for being here. I really, really enjoy this kind of talk, particularly because I feel that the building blocks of health is really that nutrition. And without the good nutrition, it's very difficult to achieve good health. So that's something that as a veterinarian, I am Brazilian. That's why the accent, pardon me. And in Brazil, of course, people used to make food for the dogs. And then when I moved to the US, I realized that very few people were doing that, and that mostly we were just buying kibbles and canned food. And And very quickly, I noticed a little less health on these animals. And as soon as you change the diet into more natural formulas, they would thrive. And obesity is just one of the things, but I think that the most immediate thing that I would hear from my clients is how happy the dogs were. Because honestly, putting down the kibble that is like every day the same thing, and they look at you and they look at the kibble, it's okay, I'm hungry, but it's not fun. And then when you actually start putting real foods down, they are grateful. So the gratitude and the happiness, and the wagging tails, that's like the first reward. And the second reward that I would see is the energy level. I mean, they just simply have a lot more energy and want to do more things, right? So that is also super exciting for the owner to notice. And then finally, the third thing that immediately is noticeable is the tiny poops, which is really wonderful because if you have to pick up after your dog and there's this giant mess, and then suddenly you have these little tiny kickers, people are like, oh my God, this is so wonderful. So those are the three immediate things. And, of course, obesity and that kind of thing that we'll talk a little more today comes along with an extended period of these diets, of course. But immediately the happiness and the small poops and the energy level would change. And how can a veterinarian not notice that and not support that and not endorse that?
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Jackie, most of the folks, if not all of them on this call, have seen what you're talking about firsthand. They've seen that changeover from feeding kibble to feeding a fresh raw diet. I remember the first time I went to a holistic vet. You probably know the person I'm talking about. And I had a problem with my dog Max, and I asked him, I asked him, it was an arthritis problem, and his first question was, what are you feeding your dog? And I said, what does that have to do with anything? But him being a holistic vet, he explained to that. So can you explain for folks, somebody that is a holistic vet, how is their approach to animal health different from what we would consider an allopathic vet? And what's the role of nutrition in that?
Well, thank you for the question, Gary. It's actually kind of complex, but again, it's the building blocks that we're talking about. So as a conventional veterinarian, often we don't have much time to talk about nutrition, and we barely even ask what the food is being fed. And we just move on to the next issue. But in a holistic scenario or a more natural veterinarian scenario, the diet is actually key many times. Like you said, arthritis, just picking up the example that you mentioned right now, it is not just the weight of the dog, of course, will have a tremendous impact on all the joints, but growth and correct growth. And then finally, the inflammatory nature of certain foods. So we all know in people that there are some inflammatory foods, and they tend to be the simple carbohydrates, which we can easily avoid when we have the power to choose the nutrients that we are feeding the dogs. So, any natural food or raw food or something that doesn't include these inflammatory foods would already help with this arthritic patient. But this is across the board. I mean, it could be a case of cystitis. It could be a case of cardiovascular disease. Doesn't matter what it is. The diet is a big part of the health of that animal.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to now introduce our other panelist, Peter. Peter is, as said, kind of a member of the Darwin's family and also a patient of Dr. Jackie's. Welcome, Peter. I was, as I think we mentioned, I'm in a situation where I have an overweight dog that Dr. Jackie is helping us with. Why don't you explain a little bit about how you came to get to know Dr. Jackie and what your experience is?
Yes. Kristen, one of Darwin's employees. She's my sister-in-law. And basically, Leroy, I met Leroy before I met Kristen. And I just noticed he was overweight. He wasn't as happy as I thought he could be. Very just would sleep most of the day, and would have a hard time breathing. And so I just I don't recall like exactly what I said, but I remember me and Kristen talking, and I just brought up possibly taking Leroy in, because I was kind of just, I was a little angry that he just how he, not at anybody, just at how just his situation, and I just wanted him to be healthier and to have more energy. And so I shared that concern with Kristen, and she mentioned that Darwin's has this program, or just this raw food diet that Leroy can go on. And so we talked a little bit about that, and so I took the initiative to adopt him, to take him in, and work with Kristen and your company, Darwin's, to feed Leroy Darwin's food. And then so with that, I met Jackie through Kristen. I believe Jackie worked with Kristen's family pet, and so that's how Kristen knew Jackie. And basically from then on, I've been working with Jackie, just seeing her for Lero's appointments and having his check-ins, and yes, that's how everything started.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're being modest, but in a real sense, you probably saved Leroy's life. You certainly have extended it by that intervention, and making sure that he's now getting the nutrition that he needs. So thank you for that. Dr. Jackie, I'd like to, I mentioned earlier that obesity, we know statistically is a big issue in the pet community. And obviously the food is a factor in that. Tell us a little bit, is that what you see in your practice? I mean, do you that over half the dogs that we're saying in the country are obese? Is that, do you see that problem the same way?
Well, I'm not quite sure that I can agree with that statistic, at least in my practice, because, we've been advocating this kind of
fair enough, yeah,
nutrition. But I do believe that is the statistic that, if you look at the entire country, that, a lot of dogs are overweight, probably due to a combination of both, poor quality nutrition or too much of free feeding kibble and things like that. And then also exercise, right? So it is a combination. It's exactly like in people. I mean, there's not any tremendous difference between obesity in people and obesity in animals. So we all know what it takes for us to lose weight. It is a combination of the healthy diet and increasing our burning of the calories. So I do believe that. And I just wanted to comment a little bit on Peter's story about Kristen. So I indeed had met Kristen's family many years ago. And it's a big example of the power of a natural diet, because we're talking about Sam. Sammy was Kristen's dog for like 18 years. I mean, he died as, I want to say 18, maybe 17 years. I don't want to exaggerate here. But I met him when he was a 2-year-old, and he had horrible problems. I mean, like, don't want to be too graphic, but like vomiting blood type thing, So he had severe GI problems. And Kristen's mom and I worked on a diet, and then she put together this diet. I mean, it had to be made fresh. It was a pain in the neck, but that dog never needed medication. He just went with the diet and normalized. And not only he outlived his expectations, but he was very well. Unfortunately we lost him, but he was already ancient. But Kristen was so taken by that the nutrition had changed her, saved her dog's life, that I think it was a motivator for her to go work for you. So there you go. I got to thank me for Kristen as well.
All right. Okay. Well, tell me, Dr. Jackie, again, when you, now, obviously your existing patients know that, but when you see a new patient that is overweight, do you feel like the pet owner actually knows that, or are they surprised? I mean, do pet owners generally know when their pet's overweight, or do they have to be kind of told that?
So I think generally they know, but I think there are cases where, it's not so obvious because, for example, if you have a very fluffy thing, then you need to touch the fluffy thing because you cannot see it, right? So there might be many cases where people think that their dogs are okay and they're not. And I can actually say the opposite. Sometimes they're too thin and that coat is hiding it. So it's both ways that I see. I mean, when you have a dog that is short hair, then it's kind of hard not to see it, right?
Right.
Ribs,
Right.
or you see the rolls of fat. But the coat hides a lot. And also there's sometimes that it's a dynamic, right? So you have the owner that is already a little overweight as well. So that diplomatically, it's hard for us to point that out, but it is an important thing because then it's actually a team effort in that dynamic duo, right? The owner and the dog, they both can get into an exercise program together and one helps the other. So I think that this is a win-win when we do that awareness arising.
So I've always heard about the rib check test, where you check the dog's ribs, and if you should be able to feel them, they shouldn't be protruding, but they shouldn't be covered with layers of fat. Is that generally a good indicator? I'm trying to think of the folks on this call that may have questions about, is my pet overweight or not? What's a good way to tell if a pet has the proper weight or needs to either add or lose a few pounds?
So there are several guidelines, but like you said, the rib one is a good one. So you do want some amount of fat on top of the ribs, but not that you can't even feel the ribs, right? So you're supposed to feel the skin with a little amount of fat and then the rib. But there are some dogs that will have a lot of fat in the mane or a lot of fat in the back. So you don't have to have necessarily an even distribution of fat. When you start talking about certain diseases where the distribution of fat kind of becomes weird, like Cushing's disease and things like that. But in general, not only the ribs, but you also have a little bit of a waistline. So if you look at the dog from above, over the rib, after the rib cage and in the flank, it's supposed to go in a bit in a waistline before the hips. And then if you look at the dog on the side, there should be an abdominal tuck, before the back legs. Often they're just a flat line, they lost entirely, more like a barrel. So the abdominal tuck, the waistline, the lack of love handles on top of the ribs, the hips, and of course the excess fat on top of the ribs. That would be your indication that you need to lose weight.
Okay.
I usually tell people, let's shoot for losing 10%. 10% is gone, you look again, and then maybe you need another 10%. So it depends really on the case, but it's super important to weigh and to seriously weigh so that you actually see that the weight loss is happening slowly but steadily, because there might be some weight loss and then you plateau. So you would have to readjust the diet or the exercise routine at that point.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. So Peter, what was your experience when you first took Leroy in to Dr. Jackie and had her examine him, and what directions did she give you to get started? How did you get started on that journey of getting Leroy back to a proper weight?
So when I first took Leroy in, she evaluated him, and I was happy that overall he was healthy. However, just the problem was his weight, his lack of energy. And so what I remember was we started out feeding Leroy, I think it was a pack and a half, I believe, or a pack of raw Darwin food. And then to get him exercising more, one thing she suggested was to get him swimming a little bit by this lake near Mercer Island. And I haven't gotten him to swim. I'm kind of afraid to get him swimming, especially when he started out. I didn't know if he would be able to, but anyways, so I just exercised him more, got him out more walking. And yeah, just that's what we first talked about. just getting him moving more and
Yeah.
feeding raw food, Darwin's food.
Yeah. Swim therapy, Dr. Jackie, is good for dogs in that condition, isn't it?
Yeah, if you think about all the weight that Leroy's carrying, right? There's always a danger of um, uh, hurting your knee or hurting your elbow or shoulder because they're carrying so much weight.
Yeah.
The owner really wants to do a good job and exercise, and they wind up hurting their knee, and now they can't exercise at all. So the swimming is good because the swimming allows for exercise with safety. But it is, a lot of dogs hate it. So if you have a Labrador, then there's no problem.
Right.
Some dogs look at the water and say, forget about it. But, Peter, you don't have to worry because in a swimming situation, you can easily put a vest that will increase the buoyancy, and then, they are not going to go straight down, right? So they do float quite nicely. I do think that the floating vest makes their spine a little more steady, and I like that a lot so that we don't stress their spine. And it's not like a struggle for survival, they actually can enjoy the swim because they're not going down. So and that works well.
Okay, nice.
And for those of you who might be in the Seattle area, I'll put in a plug for a group here called Wellsprings that is swim therapy, where they actually have a pool that they'll harness the dog up so that the dog is in no danger of drowning, but it just gives them an exercise to a chance to exercise. And we've used that a lot for our geriatric and arthritic dogs, but it also helps a lot with dogs that need to lose weight because they can get that exercise without hurting their joints.
Yeah.
Peter, you started out talking about that you were happy with the fact that Leroy was basically healthy. He was just overweight. Dr. Jackie, let me ask you about that, because as you know, the last two rescues we've brought to you were both overweight. One of them, again, was just overweight, but the other one had an underlying health condition. In her case, she was hypothyroidic, I guess.
Yeah.
So how should a pet owner approach that issue to know whether their pet is just overweight and just needs diet and exercise, or if there's some underlying health condition that's causing the overweight condition?
Well, I really think that pets should see the vet. I believe in annual exams. We really, encourage people to come once a year at least. We're not going to be vaccinating pets every year, but we do weigh and we do auscultate and we do bloods. So if we have obesity, we can have underlying conditions that have allowed the animal to become obese. And if these aren't corrected, then it's really not going to work. The diet alone, right? So sometimes what people do is they try the diet and they fail. They see that it's not working, and that's when they seek help. But sometimes we have a situation where a dog was adopted from the pound and they've been on a cage. And we have no idea, right? Is it because of lack of exercise, or is it because this dog does have an underlying condition? So like you mentioned, hypothyroidism is very common. Many dogs have a thyroid problem. And if your thyroid is low, your metabolism is very, very sluggish, and you don't have the energy to exercise, but also have a lot of trouble breaking down calories and losing weight. The other disease that is very common in an older dog that winds up becoming chubby or fat is Cushing's disease, which is an overproduction of cortisone. And we all know that cortisone makes you retain liquids, become too hungry. And if you're very hungry and you're barking for food, your owner will be feeding you because they want you to stop barking. So you wind up with a situation of excess food. So those are the two most common conditions that I would see that would contribute to obesity in animals.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. Annie, I know I can see that we've got some questions, but this might be a good time to remind our viewers that we'd like to take questions as well.
Yeah, for sure, Gary. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. We have actually some really good questions lined up here. And I'll say so first of all, if you'd like to ask a question of Dr. Jackie, Peter, or Gary, please put it in the Q&A little button at the bottom of your screen. And then we also just have kind of a fun topic here. I'm going to launch this poll since we're almost at Halloween weekend. And one of the few socially distanced acceptable things we can do is dress up our pets. We thought we'd ask how many little pets out there are going to be putting their costumes on Saturday, or maybe today and tomorrow too. So if you can, fill out the poll and we'll give everybody the results at the end. But yeah, let's go to one of our questions here. This first one is from Nancy, and she says she has a 5-year-old golden retriever and her sister, who belongs to a friend, who have both eaten Darwin's food their whole lives. We love to hear that, Nancy. And Nancy's dog is a very healthy weight, but her sister weighs 11 pounds more. The sister only eats duck and beef. But she eats 2 packages a day, while Nancy, whose dog is healthy, eats 3 a day. So she's wondering what else we can do to help the sister take off some weight.
Is that question for me?
I think for you, Dr. Jackie, you want to take that? Yeah.
Well, you know, they're individuals. So, you know, you can have 2 sisters in the same family and they're different metabolically. So just because they're sisters doesn't mean that they have the exact same metabolic rate. They also can have different conditions. One could be hypothyroid, the other not. Also, I'm not quite sure that you're telling me that the exercise level is the same. And then, you know, again, there's some different fat contents on the different foods.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not quite sure that we can equalize all these variables, but if we did, you know, we have 2 very similar dogs eating the exact same thing and having the same exact exercise, you can have one slightly fatter than the other. And this individual, if the individual needs to lose weight, might have to eat a little less than the other dog. Mm-hmm. So again, it's just individuality. And, you know, yeah. Personally, shame on people that can eat a lot without gaining weight, because I can't. So it's really an individual thing that one has to watch their waistline and the other ones, not so much. Mm-hmm. So cutting down a bit on the food of this 11-pound overweight dog is probably your best bet.
Yeah. Let me add a little bit. This is something having 3 golden retrievers basically at my feet right now. I know a little bit of something, and I can tell you, Nancy, that we feed our girls about 2 packages, which is about a pound a day. So, and they maintain their weight at around 60 pounds. So I think the unusual one is the one that you're feeding 3 packages a day, who has a metabolism that or an activity level that supports that. So I, you know, I'll turn this back to you, Jackie. I mean, if the dog is overweight, eating a pound a day, is there any danger in cutting that back to 3/4 of a pound a day? What's a good way to kind of ease that dog into a restricted calorie diet without running the danger of you know, starving it of the protein or anything that it wants? How would you go about advising that person?
Yeah, so, and I just saw that Nancy added now that the overweight dog eats less. That's a very common thing that I see. I don't know if Nancy can answer my question now, if the overweight dog is also less energetic. Oh, okay, so they get a lot of exercise. So I'm not sure that those are all the same. You know, exercise, one can be running around in circles while the other one is walking through straight. But yes, there's a lot of dogs that are overweight that don't eat much. And it's, you know, it's not very difficult to maintain your weight, right? So this dog that is eating just enough to maintain the weight will have to eat a little less, as long as you know that this dog is not indeed hypothyroid or has a health condition. So yes, you have to feed your girl a little less, and sometimes they are very upset about that. So you might want to add some things to the diet to bulk the diet so that they don't feel so much hunger. You know, things such as, you know, shredded cabbage, for example, you can add, or cut up green beans, things that will be very calorie free, but also will fill up the dog a little bit so the dog doesn't feel so empty and hungry. I have seen that. It's very kind of counterintuitive that this big dog turns down food. How can it be? But we do see that.
That's great.
Okay.
I see that there's a comment. We do add veggies to the meal, so can you recommend other veggies that might work? Are you talking about besides your cabbage? So basically, all take away your carrots and your potatoes and things that are very high glycemic index. You can use spinach. You can use Brussels sprouts. You can use zucchini to a certain extent. Um, So should I have a question, Annie. I'm not sure that I should move on with new questions because there's a lot of questions appearing on my screen.
Yeah. Let me ask Peter a question. I mean, because you've just been through this experience yourself. What do you have any tips that as with the success you've had with Leroy, that you could offer to the folks that are listening in as to how you had success with Leroy?
Yeah. I guess I'll start out with food. So at first I was feeding him, and I think it was a pack and a half, I think, or a pack, but I think it was a pack.
And he was about 55 pounds to start with.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what I noticed was after he would eat, sometimes he would gag, sometimes, most of the time he would breathe very heavily. And so it was, yes, I think it was part of him just changing to a new diet. But what I noticed was when I cut back on the food, I just took a little bit off. Slowly, he started to feel better after he ate. And so I don't know. I think you can notice signs based on how much you should feed your dog, and definitely talk with your vet about it as well. But I just noticed that when I cut back on his food, he felt a lot better after he ate. He wasn't breathing as heavy. He wouldn't gag. So yeah, that's something I noticed. Just being aware of how your dog feels when and after they're eating. Also, I think Nancy says her dog gets a lot of exercise. Maybe others listening. Leroy and Jack recommended this too, was that when your dog starts exercising or when they exercise, make sure that you don't over exercise them, which I have a tendency to do, or a temptation to do. I like to exercise myself, so sometimes I like to push Leroy. And when Jackie told me to just be careful with that, to take it slowly, I realized that when I did exercise him a lot, he would get very tired, and then the next day or two he wouldn't want to walk anymore or go outside. So just starting out slowly with your dog, if he or she hasn't been exercising consistently, and just kind of building up their cardiovascular health. So yeah, I would say that when it comes to exercising. What else?
Have you seen an improvement in his endurance since he started losing that weight? Have you seen any change?
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely, he wants to go outside more, which is very, very new and very nice. It makes me very happy and joyful. I wanted to ask something else. Oh, go ahead.
I just have to say, on the exercise front, I got to share this one picture of you and Leroy, Peter, which is lovely. This is at the beginning of his journey, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Sorry, go ahead, Peter.
So you're getting the workout.
Yeah.
I am getting the workout.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I want to add too. So I think there's moments when he does, he shows hunger. Maybe it's like late at night or in the middle of the afternoon. He gets really hungry. I mean, I don't know if he does, but it seems like he's hungry, and he comes to me when I'm eating food. So I don't give him any of my food, and he knows that now. So he doesn't come to me as often as he would before when he started out. But when he does come to me, I think it's sometimes because he's hungry. I actually don't feed him. I just kind of show him a lot of love, and I hug him and just kind of cuddle with him and pet him. And I think that helps him a lot. I think either he's looking for that or he's looking for food. I don't know. I go towards just cuddling and just showing him a lot of love. and Kristen actually recommended me do this. So I started doing that, and yeah, after I do that, he will actually go back to his bed and just lay down or do whatever he usually does by himself. So I try to definitely avoid feeding him extra food when it comes to food outside of his normal meals. I'm very cautious with that.
So give him a hug instead of a treat. Is that the
Yeah, I would
basic
say
advice there?
so. Yes, or if you have like a low calorie treat, I think I don't know. I'm not a
All right.
veteran, but I think that's fine. But in the meantime, I would go with showing him love first.
Yeah, I have the experience with mine. I mean, dogs are pretty good at working their owners for
Yes.
treats. They give you that look, and you overfeed them out of love for them. Dr. Jackie, I mean, you must.
Absolutely. That's actually one of the biggest sabotages that we do in these diets is the treats. I mean, a greenie is like a Kit Kat bar, and we don't realize that every single little thing counts. So, my advice is always that you try to choose very low calorie treats, and you give yourself a certain amount that you put it like in a Ziploc bag or something. And that's the entire amount that you can use today. You can't just get more and more, because they will be begging. And I think, Peter, that's incredibly important, that you offer love as a reward instead of just food rewards. So I think that's critical. And it's a very good point that you brought up. Thank you.
Yeah. Good. Should we try another question, Annie?
Yeah. And actually, building on that, Sharon is asking if what treats might be available from Darwin's now, or with raw products now or in the future.
Yeah, we've got a variety of treats. We have a couple different types of bones. We have lamb femurs and duck necks, and we're big fans of those kind of treats because not only they're nutritional, but they also give the dog something to work on and are good for their teeth. We also have venison jerky, which is great. You can cut it up, and that's a good training treat because you can cut it up into small bits. So those are available, and we are working on some other treats as well, because that's a question we get a lot from our customers for that. So that's something we will be in our future. But those three options exist today.
Okay.
You can also make your dog work for the treats, right? You can throw the treats. You can make them go retrieve the treats. You can make them do things for the treats. So they can earn the treats through some motion and some exercise. That also helps.
That's a great idea.
And I have heard from folks, I mean, just to put it in perspective, that treats should not be more than 10% of the dog's total caloric intake. I don't know if you have any guidelines for that.
That sounds good.
That sounds right
pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Okay.
So Laura is also asking about portion control. So she said she has a dog who's 6 years old, 50 pounds, moderately active, not overweight. How much Darwin should she be feeding just on a daily basis?
You want to take that one, Jackie? Or
Guidelines?
could you give me those numbers again? And obviously it varies by dog and by activity level. And
I think even your food has the guidelines there: inactive, moderately active, highly active.
Yeah.
And again, is this dog overweight or not? But I think the guideline usually is that you're going to be using a couple of those packs, so a pound and a half, depending on the dog, for that kind of weight, right? 55, 60.
Yeah, I kind of missed the statistics on the dog.
50 pounds, Gary, and the dog is 6 years old and moderately active, she said.
Yeah, I mean, we usually start with 2% of body weight, so that would be a pound a day. But then you have to adjust that to each dog, to their activity
Absolutely.
level.
Once you institute a diet, you're going to be knowing what the weight was in the beginning, and then every week you weigh your dog. So if this 2 packs of food, this 1 pound of food was too much or too little, you readjust right away rather than go a month or two not knowing what you are achieving. So it's important, the Weight Watchers, right? It's critical.
Yeah. I mean, the guidelines we give you are a starting point. But I can't overemphasize that every dog is different. I mean, we heard the case of I think it was Nancy that said two dogs, identical breeds, identical activity levels. One of them is maintaining a good weight on on a pound and a half a day. The other is overweight at only a pound a day. So that's a great example of how you can have how you have to tailor the dog's diet to the
Yes.
dog. There is no one size fits all or general rule. Just a starting point, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. So Dr. Jackie, you talked about some other great vegetables that are good to add to the food. And we know vegetables are used in Darwin's formulations as well. But Sharon asks if there are any fruits or vegetables that you should not feed your dog.
So we all know about grapes being perhaps a bad thing. Nobody knows exactly why. So you want to avoid those. In terms of nuts, you have to avoid macadamia nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Nuts actually are a good treat because they can't absorb it. They eat it, they love it, and then they poop it. So it just goes straight through. But no, the veggies, they could be fattening, but not really necessarily bad for them. We don't use any onions. We don't use garlic. Garlic has kind of a dose, 1 clove per 25 pounds per day, not more than that. So the onions are a no-no, and also peppers, they don't do well with peppers. There's some veggies that you would have to cook, for example, an eggplant, and then you're not going to be looking at those things. So my rule of thumb is to look at what would a bunny eat? What would a deer eat? Because that's what the dogs are getting when they kill these animals and they eat their stomach contents. So if you think, would a bunny eat this giant pumpkin? No, the bunny can't get in there. So you'd have to cook the pumpkin and then you can actually use the pumpkin, but it's not a natural thing. So all these greens that bunnies would eat are automatically okay, right? So use the bunny rule and you probably have a lot of your animals.
I'd never heard that one before. Okay.
That's super cute.
And let me just also dispel kind of something that I just learned. We've always heard that tomatoes are bad for dogs. But I've just recently learned, and Dr. Jackie, you can confirm this. It's not the tomato itself; it's the stem and the leaf that are that contain the dangerous chemicals. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's inherently bad, but it just doesn't really agree with a bunny. Again, would a bunny eat a tomato? I doubt it.
I don't know.
It's not bad. I mean, if you have like a sauce that the dog will have a little, there's no problem. But if it's spicy, then it will be. So
yeah, but I'd always, I mean, if it was leftover salad or something, I wouldn't like, oh, you can eat everything but the tomatoes, and that's not true. The tomatoes themselves are not going to.
Everything but the onions.
Everything but the onions. Okay.
We're at 4:44, but if you guys are okay, we can keep going just a little bit longer. We've got a lot of great questions here. We'll get to a couple more if we can. Mariano is asking if they're worried about, I think, maybe nutritional value that passes through the dog's stool. So is there still nutritional value in carrots that seem to pass through from the Darwin's patties?
So the value there is the fiber, right? So you need fiber. So there's 2 types of fiber. There's a soluble fiber, pumpkin and sweet potato. But then there's the insoluble fiber, such as present in carrots and in celery and things like that. So all that roughage is very important for the formation of the fecal matter and also to cleanse the colon. So the fibers are very, very important for the health of the colon. We got to recognize that the colon has a lot of bacteria, and these bacteria not only help with digestive process, but they will actually produce many of our vitamins and certain things that are very important for us. They are made by these bacteria in the gut. So the fiber is, even though a lot of it will pass through, it is important for the health of the colon.
Okay. Thank you.
That's great to know. And one last question here. Brittany asks if there are certain proteins or Darwin's varieties that we know are especially good for weight loss.
Well, our red meat varieties tend to be lower in calories than or lower in fat content than the poultries are. So I would say certainly include some of them, but I always suggest that folks, to say that I'm not saying eliminate the poultries, because it's important to get, they have different types of fats, and Jackie, you can elaborate on this. They have different types of fats, and it's important to get both of them into the pet's diet. You know, and within that, within the poultries, I think that our duck and turkey tend to be lower in calories than chicken. So there are differences.
Yeah, I would add that, it's really an individual preference as well, and how the dog does better on one or the other. So I don't think that, if the dog does very well, both on lamb and beef and turkey, then it's better if you're just looking at the fat content, that they all should work similarly. There are a lot of dogs that have allergies, and then that will be a limitation. But if you have a normal individual with no sensitivities, all of them would work. It's a matter of you realizing that you might have more fat in one than the other.
That's fantastic. I'll say to everybody, we will do our best to follow up on your other questions after this call via email. And if you have other questions you'd like the team to ask, feel free to email us at chat@darwinspet.com as well, and we'll do our best to with you.
Oops, my dog.
Oh, I love it. That's so appropriate.
I mean, I don't know if this is, I see that there are a number of questions that we haven't answered. I'm going to put you on the spot, Dr. Jackie. Can you stay a few minutes over, or is that okay?
Sure, I'm just muting because of my dog barking here. Someone arrived in my house. So
Okay.
My doorbell.
Okay, so, all right, if we can't do that.
No, that's okay. I have another few minutes, no problem.
Okay, and maybe we could just run through a bunch of these questions quickly.
Yeah. Well, and actually we have a couple questions about cats as well. I'm wondering about if similar situation, Dr. Jackie, of how to tell if your cat is at a proper weight as well.
So I don't think that there's one issue that is more different, dogs and cats, than obesity. It's extremely different. And maybe we can talk in another day, another panel about this.
Okay.
It's not easy for me to summarize. I can only tell you, if you have an obese cat, you must have a veterinarian. You cannot do this on your own. I actually talk people into buying a scale. It is very, very easy to get this cat to lose too much weight just by feeding a diet they don't like. And you're thinking, hey, great, you're not going to eat very much, you're going to lose weight, right? Cats in nature never get fat. Remember, in nature, they must be these sleek killing machines. Otherwise, they don't catch anything. So obesity in cats is not a normal thing at all. It's a very complex problem, and the weight loss has to be very, very slow. We have techniques to do this, and I will gladly talk about that more in length in a different panel day. But no, it is not the same thing at all.
Okay. We can maybe share some follow-up resources on the Darwin's website about that too. Brittany also asks if Darwin's menu consultants can help calculate how much to feed her dog if he's overweight. Gary?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, give us a call and we'd be happy to do that. Again, I want to emphasize every dog is unique, and we can certainly give you a starting point and some coaching on that. But really, it's a matter of what Dr. Jackie said was, look at how much you're feeding, weigh the dog. If it's losing weight, keep feeding that amount. If it's not losing weight, cut back. I mean, we can go into that in a little bit more detail, but that's basically the rule of thumb with this is just, you're going to know your own pet and observe it, because every pet's circumstances are going to be unique. The pet that's out, like with Peter, running a couple of miles with their owner is going to have very different caloric needs than, the one who's just, sedentary at the bottom of at the foot of a sofa.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, by all means, we'd be happy to help you, get you kind of started and dialed in to where to start, and then give you help along the way. But it is going to be something that you're going to have to kind of monitor it yourself.
Very good. And then this is an interesting question from Wanda, and I'd love to, both for Gary and for Dr. Jackie here, but she's feeding Darwin's to her diabetic Cairn Terrier and was told that larger chunks of food are better for the dog because it makes better use of the digestive system, and would like to hear your opinion on whether that's true.
Jackie, it's all yours.
I mean,
No.
I don't know if I've heard that.
I'm not quite sure that there's a big difference. I mean, definitely the dog chewing is an advantage than the dog just eats the ground thing. I don't understand the chunk thing. Definitely, if I have a problem with digestion, let's say that it's a weak digestion, then the more ground food is going to be helpful, because the stomach is kind of like a blender, right? So if you big chunks, then the stomach will have to do a lot more work than if you grind up. And in diabetes, if you're feeding these natural foods, I don't see a big difference. We do recognize that in diabetes, you want a slow digestion, but I don't know that there's a big difference between a cut up meat or ground meat. So I think you're totally fine with the Darwin's. And as a matter of fact, diabetes is a wonderful thing to use natural foods with, because you are cutting out most of those carbohydrates that will just confuse the body. All carbohydrates, like say bread or pasta or potato or something like that, rice. What happens is it quickly becomes sugar. And as soon as the body sees this sugar, the body will have to release insulin. And in the case of a diabetic, of course, they don't have the insulin to release. So they wind up with hyperglycemia. They wind up, thirsty and with the symptoms of diabetes again. So you want to avoid these spikes, the big spikes of sugar, by feeding more protein and fat. Those things don't promote the spikes that you have with the simple sugar. So I encourage you to continue that with your Cairn Terrier.
Fantastic. I think this last question is a great one to end on here. Dr. Jackie, Mickey said that her vet recommends a kibble and is really wary of raw food for her dog. But her dog loves Darwin's. So she's wondering how she can talk to her vet about the dog's love for raw food and obviously her kind of engagement with raw food and how that conversation might go.
Yeah, that's a tricky issue. I remember in the beginning of my being a vet and recommending this kind of thing, one of my clients said, at least I'm not going to have to lie to you. But it is true that, we are actually encouraged as veterinarians to discourage the use of raw food. I unfortunately have to say it's no secret why. Several years ago when the raw food market started becoming big, Purina donated a couple of $1 million to the AVMA and said, I want you guys to tell the vets to not endorse raw food. And the AVMA said, okay, AVMA, American Veterinary Medical Association. We said, okay, we'll tell them. So we all got a little note saying, hey, you shouldn't endorse raw food. Okay, that was the end. And they got their $1 million or however much. So I was shocked at how unethical that sounded to me, but apparently it was all kosher and they thought it was okay. And they say, if you are going to be endorsing raw food, you're on your own. And I've heard very absurd things, such as, for example, that raw food is full of bacteria. We are, tired of seeing our dogs eating cat poop and dog poop and all sorts of stuff. And that's pure bacteria, right? We also know that kibbles, because they are bacteria free and coated with fats, they are very prone of getting secondary contaminations. And the natural bacteria of the raw food actually fights the pathogenic bacteria. I've been advocating these diets for years and years and years. I've not had any one single case of Salmonella or E. coli, not one. And I know that it's been reported in the literature, but there's way more reports in the literature with kibbles with these contaminants. So I don't share this, but it's a little bit fear and also, I don't want to say ignorance, but less education. The vet schools, you just learn how to prescribe Royal Canin and science diet. You don't really have a small animal nutrition class that is, it's elective. So if you don't want to go there, you don't go there. Veterinarians study a lot of nutrition, but it's for slaughter, right? So how to get a pig and a cow to produce as much milk or grow as fast as you can to eat this animal or to get the milk or the eggs from the animal, but not really dogs and cats. They're pets. And we say, okay, you just do the ABC diet. It's cystitis, you do CD, and it's dermatitis, you do DD, and it's heart disease is HD. So why would you have to learn more? So vets have to go through their own aha moment. And if you have a young vet, maybe that aha moment hasn't happened yet. Maybe it's you that will be the aha for your vet. So I encourage you to be honest, not have to lie. Because if you have to lie to your vet, you need to find another vet.
Right. Let me add a little bit to that might help. I've heard this over the years. What are the three complaints that vets and others have about raw diets tend to fall into three categories. One is, the bones are going to puncture my pet's digestive tract. Two is that the diets are not complete and balanced, that there's something wrong with the diet itself. And third, of course, is the danger of pathogens. And addressing those three, the first one I'll say is legitimate. I mean, if you have a strong jaw and your dog and you're feeding a bone to that dog, you run the risk that they're going to swallow a shard of that. So, we address that by grinding our bones really, really finely so that they can't do any harm. The second issue is also, I think, a very legitimate thing to be concerned with. And this is primarily the case with a homemade diet that it might not be complete and balanced. I think of a vet who or anybody who has a concern about a homemade diet out of concern for whether it's complete and balanced, that's a legitimate concern. As we've heard, some of the best fed dogs are fed a homemade diet. Some of the worst dogs are fed a homemade diet. So you have to be concerned with that. The third issue, which is what most people associate with, which is the issue of pathogenic bacteria, as Dr. Jackie noted. I mean, this is just, any raw feeder knows that this is it's just not true. I mean, the dog's digestive system and cats are well attuned to deal with a normal load of those kind of bacteria. Those bacteria, which might be pathogenic to humans, are not pathogenic to dogs. You're going to have a tough time convincing your vet of this if they don't know it already. But my experience has been the same, that some of the toughest vets to convince are the ones that are right out of school, that have just been through their one nutrition course if they got it. Whereas the ones that are most open to this kind of thing are the ones that have been in practice for years and years and have seen for themselves and can make their decisions based on their experience rather than what they've been indoctrinated to. So with that, I'll get off my soapbox. If we're out of time, I guess that's it. It's too bad. I mean, these are great questions, and I wish we could talk more. Let me just add, before we leave, let me ask Peter one more question. How is Leroy doing now? What's his weight now?
His weight is around 47, 48 pounds.
Okay, great. And what's your target for him?
It was 10 pounds at first.
Okay. So he's got a few pounds to go.
Yes. Yeah. And
okay. And how would you describe his current kind of joie de vivre? How's he liking life these days?
I think it seems like he's in retirement. I don't know. He's just rest. He seems a lot happier, and his mood seems a lot better. So yeah, I think he's doing good.
Can you take him for walks now? I mean, what kind of walks can you take him on?
Yeah, absolutely. I take him for walks. Sometimes I take him around the block, or our block is pretty big, so I take him around that. And sometimes we go to the park and just walk around there, or just play a little bit. He likes to play soccer. I try to play soccer with him once in a while. So he's doing.
Maybe
good.
He's a Brazilian dog there, Jackie. He likes soccer.
Yes.
All right, Andy, I don't know if you want to wrap it up, but I'll thank both of our panelists here, Peter and Dr. Jackie, for helping us with this today, and to everybody that that joined us. Thank you very much. I hope this was helpful, and if you have any ideas for future topics, we'd love to hear them, because we would like to make this an ongoing thing that a conversation that we have with our customers.